You're listening to The Business of Glamping and Unique Holiday Rentals, Episode 9. This is where we love to talk about tips, tricks, and inspirations for anyone hosting guests in unique structures. We tackle the A to Z of turning your passion into profits because building a successful business takes time and effort. So I share proven strategies to help you get there faster. In any new industry, it's vitally important that we pay attention to what's going on, what's happening in the future, what trends are starting to emerge, what are the big businesses doing. This is what I'm discussing with my special guest today, and we're talking about the trends that are starting to come out of Europe and what we can all learn from them. So, let's get started. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley, and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is The Business of Glamping and Unique Holiday Rentals. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. It's really lovely to have you here. I've got a brilliant treat for you today. Today I have got an expert from Europe, Richard Otten, who is based over in Holland and has been the owner of Glamping.nl, a website over in Europe, for many, many years. He has a huge amount of experience because not only is he the owner of this website, but he is also a part-time university lecturer working on the subject of glamping and hospitality and unique accommodation. He has unique insight into this industry, into what's going on in Europe, into trends that are starting to emerge, into how the industry is operating. And I am very, very pleased and grateful that he took the time out of his day to join us today to share his knowledge and his expertise with us so that we can all benefit from it. So without further ado, I'm going to hop over to that interview now. So hello, Richard. Thank you so much for joining me today and giving me some of your time.
No problem. Thank you, Sarah, for having me. Of course, we already met during the Facebook live chat, and that was already quite interesting, I think.
Yes.
So I'm very happy to also participate in your new podcast series. Did you get any replies already as a response on your new medium that you are introducing now?
Yes, and it's been so amazingly positive, and I'm so grateful for all the reviews from everybody. I think it really helps people that they can multitask their time. So while they're doing their normal daily chores, whatever those chores might be, they can still listen in and keep up to date with things such as what we're going to talk about today, which is European trends in the glamping industry.
Right.
And for the benefit of the listeners, maybe we'll start about talking about where you are, what you do, and your involvement in the glamping market. Can you give us a bit of an overview, Richard?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everybody listening to this podcast, of course. I'm also myself a very fond person of podcast. I listen to it while I'm running. So of course I want to introduce myself. My name is Richard Otten. I'm the owner of Glamping.nl, which is the biggest website at the moment in the Netherlands if we talk about the glamping industry. We also have some translation websites in France and in Germany, but it's the websites are smaller. Besides that website, I'm also a teacher, a part-time teacher at the Breda University, where I give some lectures and do some research about this topic. Last year, I was also attending the Glamping Summit, of course, in Denver, where I gave a topic about the same. I gave a presentation about this topic. So yeah, that in a nutshell is me about, concerning glamping, of course. So we have a big website here in Holland, and to put that in perspective, we have about 500 accommodations or destinations that are listed on our website, and all the Dutch customers that are willing to go on a glamping holiday, they can address our website, visit our website, and then of course go to a tour operator or directly to a destination to book the holiday.
So you are perfectly placed to have a bird's eye view of the trends and movements in the industry and what's actually happening. And have you noticed anything in terms of your own businesses and your own work in the university about things that might be coming out? So is there an increase in interest? Is there an increase in traffic? Are more people coming on board with this subject? What have you noticed?
I think there is still an increase in traffic on our website. Of course, the pace of the traffic, it's not doubling every year like it did before. In the early years, 2012 and 2013, there was really like a double or triple on the amount of visitors on the website. That is not really the case anymore, because I think there's a lot of competition websites out there, not only glamping but also unique locations, etc., etc. So I think I could pick 9 or 10 websites that are all doing the same thing. Let's say proposing an overview of destinations that are very special. And of course, glamping is very unique for because they have the connection with the camping industry. And I think in Europe, of course, we have a lot of campsites that are now investing a lot of money to become a glamping instead of a camping. So that is something that we see. That is something that was also coming out of the research that we did last November. Let's say glamping is still on the move, and I think in Europe a lot of people are still willing to pay money for an accommodation or a destination that is maybe more expensive than a hotel or a traditional camping, but is more in perspective of sustainability, nature, etc., etc. So that's why I think the trend is still going on, but it's evolving. It's not like glamping is not a unique selling point anymore. I think there are a lot of things that have to be adjusted or put on top of just having a safari tent.
Absolutely. And I think you're bang on there, especially when you're talking earlier about competition as well. As the competition increases and the industry is evolving and developing, that's when business owners such as ourselves and other business owners in this industry have to really look at what they're offering and decide where they maybe should be diversifying to address the needs of the customer, which are constantly changing. And it's really interesting as well that you mentioned there about your research. Is that research public? Is that something that other people can access?
We are now we are putting it online. It's not online yet. If you can go to our website, I think in the next week or 2 weeks. So let's say end of January, that will be online, and I think it will be like a summary, of course, of the big research. But I think the most interesting outcome is that we found out that, of course, the visitors on our website are all coming with a different intention. So glamping, of course, is a word that is not quite good understood for everybody. Everybody has his own definition. And of course, within the industry, there's a lot of talking about a rating system, a star system. What we found out also in the research is that actually there are 4, let's say, segments of glamping. And that will be in that summary, of course. And if you want to, I can talk a little bit about those 4 segments.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
I think the first segment is the glamping nature. So that is like the small scale glamping owner, maybe on a farmland with only 3 safari tents on his area, with a very personal service where you will talk to the owner, maybe have some luxury around it, but very in nature, of course, because that is the name of the segment. Maybe with a maximum of 20 or 25 accommodations. I think the second segment would be glamping camping. So that are all campsites at the moment within Europe, especially, that are built on a campsite structure. So they were maybe already there since the 80s or the 70s, and they are now, of course, at the end of their life chain, let's say, and they are now moving up towards a glamping. So part of the campsite is a glamping. So not the whole camping is glamping, but some areas are designated as a glamping area, and there you will see all the safari tents. And that is something that we see in France, we see it in Italy, we see it in Spain, we see it everywhere. There are a lot of big investors now investing in this campsite industry because they see, the campsite can earn more money with glamping, of course. So that is the second segment, the traditional campsite with a glamping area. The third segment is the glamping village. For example, like the one in Slovenia, like in Bled, but I also know a couple in Tuscany, Orlando in Chianti. It's only glamping, but then of course on a bigger scale. So you will have more accommodations. I think in Orlando and Chianti, there are more than 100 accommodations, and that is all designated as a glamping village. And I think the whole ambiance on that particular glamping is luxury. So the restaurant is high end, the service is high end. You see it everywhere. It's not only the accommodation. So that is the third segment, glamping village. And I think the fourth one is, you can have some discussion about it, but it's a glamping experience, where you could say that sleeping in an igloo in Iceland is an experience, but it's not really. It's just one accommodation that is really Instagrammable. It's really special, and that could be anything from Finland in an igloo or maybe in a tree house, but all small scale and like a unique character. So those are the four segments that we see now in the market.
So tell me a bit about the research. Was it done amongst, was it a digital research project? Was it amongst the industry and business owners? How was that done?
Actually, it was both. It was a quality research, and there were interviews with people in the industry that we know in Holland have some opinion about the word glamping, and that, of course, we came up with this definition of the four segments. And on the other hand, we saw the visitors on our website, and we worked in collaboration with the tour operator, which also gave access to the bookers of that tour operator. So the people that book via the tour operator were interviewed with a questionnaire.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. Well, when that is launched, maybe I can put that as a link in the show notes to this podcast so people can find that easily. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And you raised a couple of things around trends that you're starting to see in Europe of big businesses and what they're doing to get probably... I don't know if you feel what their underlying reasons are for the big, bold moves that they're making in the industry at the moment.
Right.
But potentially it could be trying to access a different consumer for the future and strengthening their business by moving alongside a trend that's happening that they're seeing is gaining in strength. But maybe if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. What we see in Europe is that the old-fashioned campsite is you cannot do it on your own anymore. I think from a camping view perspective, maybe 15 years ago, you could be independent, have hundreds accommodations somewhere in France, and have a good life. But now, these days, with the marketing costs and the investment costs that you have to do in trying to find the customer through internet, and all people are now last minute bookers. So it's not like it used to be in January, everybody had his holiday already planned. Now it's all in June. And on the other hand, you have to really invest in good accommodations, and they cost money. You cannot just put on a bungalow tent and then people will be happy with plastic chairs, etc. So that was back in the days. And now, of course, all these campsites are bonding together. And first we saw some groups and some tour operators coming up, but now I think the last year and 2 years we see a movement of big investors, and these are really private equities, so they are in it for the money, and they have pointed out the camping and glamping industry as an industry where money is made, where money is still made. And I think in Europe now we have two big conglomerates of tour operators. One is the Vakallianz or the Vakantselect group, which is I think the second largest group now in Europe in terms of revenue, and they are the owner also of Canvas. I think Canvas is well known in the UK as well, but also Vakantselect, Tuapi, Amak, all these brands are now part of this big family. And then the other part, it's the European camping group with brands as Eurocamp, Rowan, Gopher Camp, and they are all together now. So these are the Home Air group. I'm sorry. So the Home Air group and the Vakantselect group are now really dictating the market for the campsite industry. So what is funny is, of course, that these big investors and private equities, they have millions, so they have a lot of money to burn, and they invest. So if they buy a new accommodation, they don't just buy one, they buy thousands maybe for all their campsites, and they are all investing on glamping. So like we discussed it in the Facebook live chat as well, I think for your listeners, which are more maybe the small scale glamping owners, maybe I'm a little bit, I don't know if they're all like that, but I think a lot of listeners are small scale and they need that advice. You have to be different than these big companies because you cannot compete with them. And I think that is a trend that is possible because we see with the visitors of our website as well. And I saw that on the trade fair where I was earlier this week in Holland on the Vakantiebeurs in Utrecht. It's all about sustainability. It's all about personal. It's all about nature. So people are really moving back from mass tourism, let's say, and moving back towards a small scale tourism. And they have the money for it as well. And there are different target groups to address because you will have the baby boomers with a lot of money and a lot of spare time. You will have millennials now with children, and they have a good job with money to earn and to spend, and they want for their vacation and their best of the best. So these are all target groups for your business. And I think the only thing that you have to do is to really be yourself, to see what your unique selling points are as a business, as a location, as a owner, and then point that out on your business model, and not trying to compete with all these big investors and groups that are there, because they have their part of the market, but they are big, so they cannot move, they cannot change very fast. So that would be my advice as well to all the listeners, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right there too, because there will always be big investors and big competitors coming into any market, especially when a market is showing such moves towards strength as this industry is. So the only way to deal with that is to show your differentiation, so how different you are and how unique you are, and to offer the personal service that those bigger industry-led businesses cannot really provide so well, because they're just too big. So they can't do those smaller, more personal service and offerings and experiences and things like that. True. And that's definitely where I've seen even some businesses try and move into. So, for example, we have the Marriott Hotel Group in London. They're running an experiment at the moment. And this isn't about glamping, but it shows the way the industry is going. They're running an experiment where they are picking hand-selected, home-based accommodation. So people can actually book somebody's home. So a bit like Airbnb, but it's much higher in terms of quality and level of service. And so this small selection of offerings is available to people who may otherwise have wanted to stay in a hotel in London. So again, it's showing how a big industry level, big business is moving away from mass offerings in hotels and offering a more bespoke service. So they're obviously experimenting with that kind of approach. And you're seeing some other experiments happening as well, and some other strategic movements, almost like a game of chess that's happening in Europe. So
right. And is the news in the UK? Is that big news that there are these two big groups in Europe now dictating the market? Like I mentioned, the Vakant Select Group and the Home Air Group.
Funnily enough, no. I haven't seen a huge influx of news channels talking about this, just a few here and there. So it's not, the UK hasn't really picked up on this as something that is big news.
Right.
But it just could be because it's being buried amongst the political news that's going on at the moment, because there's so much politics going on in the UK with Brexit and all the issues that we're having at the moment. So it could just be that it's being buried.
Right.
But yes, it's not something that's making huge news. That's not to say it shouldn't be listened to, of course.
No, but I think it's interesting to have that as a topic, because I think a lot of glamping owners are in this business, of course, because they are passionate about the business or about changing their lives, or trying to set up a business. But you're in the right business, I think, because there is a lot of money made by these companies, and they're not in it just for the passion, because they are really in it for the Excel sheet and their revenue in the end. So, and I think a couple of years ago they made that decision, and I think it will go like this: that these big conglomerates of brands and tour operators, they will dictate the market, but of course it will have an how do you say that, an anti-movement, because like I said, the only movement that I see is to do it differently is to be small scaled and be personal. And I think with internet and with a personal service on the site, you can do that. I mean, that's the whole thing. And then you can make a difference.
Absolutely. And some people worry about when big industry starts moving into a market. They worry about the extra competition. They worry about whether they're going to be pushed out. And so they start questioning, is this the best thing for me to do, to get involved in this particular thing? But actually, I think it should be the other way, that you should find this really encouraging, that big businesses are wanting to come into this part of the market, because it means that there's big things happening, and they're seeing that people and customer behavior is moving in a certain direction. And a market where there's no competition means there's not much money. Exactly. And it's a big risk to move into that market. But when you're seeing competition coming in, then you can start saying, right, there's money there. People are understanding that this is a place to be. So I'm going to follow that, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm different. So exactly what you were saying earlier, to make sure that the offer is different, and they're able to offer something that the bigger industry leaders cannot offer. And that's absolutely where you've hit the nail on the head. And I think it's something that people should take encouragement from and not be worried about the competition.
What do you see, Sarah, in the UK and also maybe worldwide, as also a professional in the industry, about sustainability in the world? Of course, maybe glamping is already very sustainable in some terms. When I was on the trade show earlier this week, that was really the topic of the trade show. The keynote of the first day was about sustainability, and there were a lot of examples given about companies that really are now trying to be different and put all their money on sustainability. For example, there was a hotel that gave not only points for your like the old-fashioned way, you get points in a hotel when you get a room or you pay money, or you have a bigger room, but they gave points when you don't use the towel, or when you choose a certain menu in the restaurant that is very sustainable cooking. So in that way, people earned points to get like free rooms, that the reward system. Yes. And I thought that was very interesting. I mean, that's very now a new topic. I think it's the same thing as the Tom's shoes. I think that for example is also well known in the UK. When you buy shoes from Tom's, then the local industry where the shoes are made, they give shoes away to people that don't have shoes. So you pay your money, but actually somebody else gets shoes as well. So all these examples. What do you see within the glamping industry on that topic?
Well, it's interesting that you said that about the hotel, and I had that exact same experience. So I went to a hotel for a week, and if I put a note on my door to say that I didn't want someone to come in and clean my room, then I was given a percentage discount off of any food or drink that I bought from that hotel. So they were encouraging me to not use their facilities so that sustainability was happening, and it was my choice as the customer, and I was getting a reward. And I think we're starting to see a bit of that coming into the glamping world on the service level, but not very much. More what's happening in terms of sustainability is the types of offerings that are being given to customers, such as the hot tub is a particular type of hot tub.
Right.
The off-grid facilities that are being used are being talked about so that customers understand that their stay is off-grid. The negotiation that the service deliverer is having to have with the customer to say, you won't, the level of service that you maybe have expected isn't possible because we are off grid, and this gives these benefits instead to the environment. And it's those kind of negotiations that business owners are having to make very carefully with their customers so that they don't get negative reviews, because it's all about expectation for the customer. As long as they understand and expect something, a certain level, then they won't have a negative review. They won't negatively react to that. Many things are happening, and one of the things that I have seen from a glamping site that I've worked with very closely is they have been able to generate a massive marketing opportunity by working with a big brand, which was Carlsberg, and they worked with them in a very sustainable and off-grid way, where Carlsberg wanted to do some marketing and a social media strategic project, and they worked with the glamping site, who then in return got an off-grid building built totally at the cost of Carlsberg. So it was a really interesting project, and I've never seen anything like it. But it was all because it was a sustainable project, it was off-grid, and it was in a place of natural beauty. So it's just, the only limit is your imagination. It absolutely is. And it's showing how important it is, the sustainability and the off-grid approach to big businesses, and how important it is. And they're recognizing that the glamping industry has this. And looking at my own statistics from my own website and the things that people find most interesting, it is usually sustainability, it's usually off-grid, all of those things are the topics that people are so interested in learning about more. But one other thing that I've noticed more, and that is around wellness, particularly in America, because wellness and health is something people are paying more attention to. They're learning more about it. And particularly in America, where they pay for their health care directly, it's so much more expensive. They are understanding that in educating themselves, they can do this in an environment that is beautiful, is nurturing, and they're starting to look at the glamping offerings as a way of doing that in a way that is also sustainable and off-grid. So these topics are all coming together. And so when you start seeing this, you start seeing a magic source, because the customer and the provider are able to come together, and that's where you start seeing lots of growth and new things coming out of an industry that you didn't ever expect, such as the project that I just talked about earlier. So it's really interesting. And I don't know if you've heard about the big move that's been happening in America with KSL hotels and resorts working with Under Canvas.
No, I haven't.
So they have
Not yet.
just signed up a deal where the two of them are coming together. And so KSL is a big hotel and resorts industry leader, massive business. And they've just signed a deal with Sarah Dusick from Under Canvas to provide, so that they provide an element of their offering now.
No,
And
very
so,
nice.
yeah, so this is, and I was only speaking to Ruben Martinez from Glamping Hub yesterday about this. It's again what you were talking about, the millennials and future generations getting involved in business and being able to offer something that links in with that. So we're seeing huge moves in this industry and big business coming in, and I think that is definitely something that should be reassuring the smaller business that
Yeah.
this is an area of growth.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think everywhere is a green light. About that sustainability, I think as an industry, as a tourism industry, we are maybe arrived upon a point where you could say 2019 could be a tipping point. At least in Holland, we see it like this. What that was also mentioned earlier this week. Maybe glamping is already a front runner in that shift. But it was nicely said by the guy who did the presentation, but I can't recall his name. But he said the travel industry is moving on the wrong road. And of course, like in the month of January, as a person, you just had December, all the holidays, and you drink too much and you eat too much, and then in January you get like the dry January. Of course, everybody stops drinking, and you do less of this, less of that, less of that. But he said that as an industry, if you can slow down, but if you're on the wrong road, you have to turn around, actually. So that is more for the whole tourism industry, because that accords more to the airlines, for example, because there's a lot of topic about that, flying all over the world now for practically nothing, with the Ryanairs of this world, and producing a lot of pollution. So I think like a counter trend is actually glamping and is nature, and people are reaching out to nature again, reaching out to each other, reaching out for health. And these are all combined in glamping. I guess in European perspective, we see it like this. And like I said, from all over, we see people are investing in it. One funny and interesting detail about that as well is that we see that the festival business is also moving into glamping. So I know a company here in Holland that is providing all the accommodations on the festivals, such as Lowland, Tomorrowland, the big festivals during the summer where all the youth are coming. But this owner said, well, actually, it's not the youth anymore that is coming. So he said the youth is still coming, but people of 30 that used to go when they were young in a small tent and go to a festival for 3 days and didn't expect anything, they still want to go, but now they earn money and they want to have a jacuzzi next to their tent, and they want to pay maybe $1,000 for the weekend because there's they want to relax with their friends. So on Lowlands, for example, which is I think the biggest festival in Holland, there are now over 1,700 accommodations only for the weekend during that festival, and they're all filled. They were all booked within the minute, within the day. So the website couldn't it was after a day was fully booked. So that is also interesting to see that other businesses are now into glamping, because they call it glamping. It's called a lodge. It's called a glamp village on the festival area. So it's the same thing, but in another segment. So that is also interesting.
I can totally relate to that. As somebody who used to go to festivals a lot, I don't know if you have heard of Glastonbury Festival.
Yeah, sure.
So I used to live very close to there, and so I used to go every year. And when I was younger, I could absolutely sleep in a tent on the floor, on a small roll mat, and then go all day listening to bands and getting involved in the whole vibe of the festival. Go back to the tent and not sleep hardly a wink because it was so noisy around. There's a sea of tents and in the mud, and I didn't think twice about it. I could sleep when I get home, it would be fine. But now, no way. And so we're seeing exactly the same thing at Glastonbury Festival, but it's actually I believe I'm right in saying that one of the glamping offerings there is one of the most expensive glamping offerings in the world. So
Right.
it's a particular offering where you actually have a butler of sorts who is there to look after your every whim. You have access to being transported anywhere in the site that you like.
Right.
You can be transported off-site in a helicopter, that kind of
And
thing.
do you know what you pay for that, if you would go to Glastonbury and stay there in the glamping area?
Well, there's two particular types of areas. So that one with the butler, we're talking tens of thousands of
Right.
pounds. But then there are other glamping offerings which are a bit cheaper, around the £1,000 and so on. And depending on how many add-ons you want, as you said, do you want the jacuzzi? Do you want how many beds? You know, is it for 4? Is it for 6? Is it for 2? That kind of thing. People are
Right.
paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's
I heard also a story about a guy, a business owner, who invited his clients to Lowlands, and then just out of Lowlands on another area, he built a big glamping tent, like a big safari tent, but then like a business platform or a business pavilion. And he spent I thought it was something like €100,000 just to put that on, and that is another perspective. So business is in it as well. So not only people come to the festivals, but businesses, they invite their clients and then say, well, come this whole weekend and I pay for you. And then of course that is really interesting. And it's all glamping. It all has a touch of glamping because they call it glamping.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it's glamping, of course, that could be a discussion, but
Yes. And there are many debates around exactly what is glamping, because the different services vary so much, not just in the festival world, but in the holiday world as well. So
right.
it really is very different, and it's quite tricky to categorize the different types of glamping. So you've categorized things that have come out of your research into 4 key areas, as we talked about earlier.
Right.
But you know, there are some others who would debate that there are even more categories that different offerings can be put into. And I think the same is coming out of the festival world. And I believe, as you said earlier, about how the people who are accessing this and paying for these services in the festival world are those people who have moved from being young festival goers to now older festival goers. And so this is just businesses offering what their customers want, and that's
Yeah.
key, and that's
Yeah.
why it's so successful.
I think one thing that was also interesting, you talked earlier about health and reconnecting to nature again. The person that was giving the presentation, the keynote, he said that in the USA, in the United States, 75% of the people now live in city areas, and actually in the same. I don't know. I have to find out maybe if I can get the source of that research. But he also said that 7% of the children in the USA get only, I thought it was a couple of hours outside, and I thought it was 2 or 3 hours, something like that, because I was really in shock, because when I go back to my own youth, and I'm 35 now, I was always outside. There was no social media, there was no computer, there was no, you only sat inside when it was raining, and even then my mother said, well, go outside and put on your coat. So if now in this world people raise up their children sitting on the back bench of their car, moving from the piano teacher to school to, I don't know, and always sit inside because there's always social media and a computer, then you will also see that if there is a holiday and if there's a weekend, and as a family you want to be together, then you want to reconnect to nature. So that is also a big challenge and a big opportunity as an industry as we are in, to provide that, of course. And like I said, if people really want it, and now in these days, nature and being silent and being without Wi-Fi is a luxury. So you can define that as a luxury, and then the price goes up. So the guy in the presentation also answered the question of somebody in the room. And of course, the big question was, well, if everybody is earning more money, and if in China everybody's getting into like the middle class income, then they all want to travel and they all want to see the landmarks, but they all want to see nature and they all want to visit the parks, etc., etc. So what will that be in the future then? And then the simple answer was, of course, well, then the price goes up, because everybody wants to go, but everybody cannot go. And you already see that in the national parks in America. There's a limited amount of visitors that can go, and you see that in Iceland as well. You see that on the islands in Holland as well. If you want to visit the island, you really need a time slot now, because otherwise you cannot go. So these are all things that are in the end good as a business, but then again also makes you wonder, makes you think where the world is going now.
Absolutely. And everything that we're doing in our daily lives and how that's impacting then what we want to do in our downtime and our relaxation time. And you touched on there about the Wi-Fi, and there's huge debates raging amongst the glamping industry about, should Wi-Fi be offered? Should it not be offered? Should people be forced to switch off? It's good for them. People want to switch off, but then there's others who don't want to switch off. They still need to keep businesses going. They still need to keep in contact with loved ones, that kind of thing. And it's a huge melting pot of debate, and a very exciting and interesting place to be right now. I don't know if that's what you feel as well.
Yeah, it is an industry that is moving constantly and is touching every trend and opportunity that we see. Because I think in the UK, glamping was already there maybe in 2010, 2009, but it's still popular, and it's not declining. It is really on the move, and it's moving up. And you see a lot of markets like the United States, like you mentioned, the deal that Canvas made now with the hotel. What will happen if all the Chinese are willing to go glamping? I mean, that is something that we cannot foresee. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is as well that because I offer courses to help people set up. And it's really interesting when I start to see the countries where people are buying the courses from. And that, for me, gives me an indication about where is the interest in this industry coming from.
Right.
And so I have started to see more things going on in Japan and in China. Some more interest in that part of the world. And so who knows where this is going to take us? Who knows what's going to happen next? It's a very interesting time. So what would you say to somebody who is on the verge of maybe making a decision about getting involved in this industry? What would you say to them? What would be your view?
I would say do it in any way, because if it's a life-changing decision, like somebody now has let's say a regular job and wants to make a decision and change his life and become an owner of a glamping destination, I mean, go for it. I mean, make sure that, of course, that the backbones of your business model are good. But nobody could really predict in 2013 where the world is now, actually. So within 5 years, everything has changed already. So when I started out my business 15 years ago, I really had to fill in a business model. I had to go to the Chamber of Commerce, and everybody had to sign it, or you really had to have a business model of multiple pages. And I think, of course, that is still important. Like I said, you have to have a backbone of your company. But I think the whole start is it really something that you love? Like I mentioned before, there are big players with big money. You cannot compete with that. You have to do it if you love it. If you like serving customers, connecting with people, and you do not have that in your own job at the moment, then yeah, go for it. I mean, it's a different kind of life. It will be a hell of a job, of course, because you have to do everything on a small scale glamping. But then again, you're in nature, you're reconnecting to people. Go for it.
Oh, Richard, it's been so fantastic talking to you, and I'm so grateful for your time today, because I know that you've taken time out of your daily work and your tasks that you need to do, and I'm very grateful, and I'm sure the listeners will be too.
No problem. It was very good to be here. Thank you for having me. And let's see if we can put on the summary of the research online, like I said, end of January. So normally that would be on your website if it will be end of January.
Yes, and I will definitely include all of that in the show notes for this episode. And all you need to do is do www.inspiredcamping.com/ and the number of the episode to get the episode you want to listen to. So thank you so much, Richard, again, and hope to see you very, very soon.
Thank you, Sarah. All the best.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
And what an absolute pleasure it has been speaking to Richard today. I could simply talk to him all day about this industry and what's going on in it. And I'm sure Richard's going to be a guest again on the podcast. And I appreciate you for joining us. It's amazing to have you here. If you found this useful and inspiring and you'd like to hear more of this kind of thing, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on iTunes. You can check out the show notes over on inspiredcamping.com/podcast. And you can also check out everything to do with the glamping industry and glamping in general, to partake in it and anything in between over on that inspiration portal. You can also check out my signature course, From Overwhelmed to Overbooked, a masterclass teaching you the secrets to attracting more guests and commission-free bookings. Or if you simply want to investigate setting up your own glamping business, I have also introduced a setup course helping you to get the information you need quickly so you can make it happen in as little time as possible. You can find all of that over on Inspired Courses. And finally, we have such a generous and amazing group of people who are either thinking and dreaming of starting their own glamping business, or they already have and they're working to overcome daily issues. You can join us all over in our Facebook group and we'd love to have you there. So see you soon and take care.